The corporate press thought they had a perfect scandal. Anonymous sources, palace intrigue, a director of national intelligence allegedly cut out of military planning, aides supposedly joking that DNI stood for do not invite. It was a great story, but there was only a problem. None of it was true. The vice president stepping to the podium in the briefing room unexpectedly and incinerated the entire narrative in under 60 seconds. What really happened in Venezuela, why China is freaking out, is the story that they don't want you to know. Because if the media's lies go unchallenged, every future military operation becomes a political hostage situation. Anonymous leaks designed to manufacture dissent, fake stories about internal chaos meant to paralyze decision-making. That's the playbook that they tried to run on Venezuela. The vice president shut it down publicly, confirming that he was fully involved in the planning, as involved as the president wanted him to be. He confirmed DNI Gabbard was not excluded, that both claims were complete fabrications. Meanwhile, the Senate rushed through a war powers resolution claiming to limit the president's authority, but as the vice president said plainly, the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. The Constitution does give the commander-in-chief authority to defend American interests. Congress declares war. It doesn't micromanage operations, you see. The media wanted a scandal, but instead they got a lesson in the Constitution. You see, when the world gets unstable, you don't want to be caught off guard. That's why I trust my Patriot Supply, because right now they've got a special deal on their 3-month emergency food kit. Save $100 while supplies last. Over 2,000 calories a day for 90 days. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks, and snacks packed in sturdy buckets last up to 25 years. Made right here in the USA. Fast free shipping, disaster replacement guarantee. Go to preparedwithgary.com right now. Get prepared and get peace of mind. But here's what the media is not wanting you to focus on. You see, the operation worked. China hurt horribly. See, just before the Venezuela action, Beijing publicly declared it would not give up an inch of its gains in Latin America. And then what happened? Trump moved. Maduro was neutralized and China lost a critical foothold in the Western Hemisphere. That is why Beijing issued what they called a final warning against the so-called illegal U.S. blockade. That's not diplomatic language, that's called panic. The U.S. ambassador to NATO confirming the strategy. The president's first foreign policy priority is the Western Hemisphere. New oil and trade deals are taking shape that prioritize American products and American industry. China is being cut out. Finally. Now, what do we have here? We have the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, talking about the war powers. Now, Victoria writes, every single step President Trump has taken related to Venezuela, the EU, Saudis, Russia, Ukraine, China, and keeping America safe is constitutional. The War Powers Act, officially known as the War Powers Resolution of 1973, is a federal law designed to limit the U.S. president's ability to engage military forces without congressional approval. It was enacted in response to concerns over the Vietnam War and aims to restore the balance of power between Congress and the president regarding military actions. The president can deploy U.S. armed forces into action only with a declaration of war by Congress, specific statutory authorization, a national emergency created by an attack on the U.S. or its forces. You see that? The president must notify Congress within 48 hours of deploying troops. Ongoing reports are required every 6 months during military engagements. Military forces cannot remain in action for more than 60 days without congressional authorization. An additional 30-day withdrawal period is allowed if Congress does not authorize continued military action. Introduced by Congressman Clement Zablocki, the resolution passed with bipartisan support. It was vetoed by Nixon, but it was overridden by Congress, becoming law in 1973, November 7th. The act reflects the constitutional division of power. Congress has the authority to declare war and fund military operation. The president serves as commander-in-chief, responsible for leading military operations. War Powers Act has been a subject of debate regarding its effectiveness and constitutionality, with various presidents challenging its provisions over the years. So let's go to the House Speaker Johnson. See what he has to say.
Even assembling the gang. With regard to the war powers and the compliance with federal law, we are not at war. We do not have U.S. armed forces in Venezuela, and we are not occupying that country. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war, that is true, but it also vests the President of the United States with vast authorities as Commander-in-Chief. Despite the claims by some of my colleagues, under the War Powers Act, there is no requirement for prior congressional approval or prior notification. And in fact, in this case, the intelligence was so sensitive, the conditions had to be perfect, there was no predetermination of when exactly it would occur. And if there had been prior notice, even assembling the Gang of Eight, for example, during the December holiday, it would have set off alerts and very likely might have been a leaked situation which could have caused great damage to our forces, our troops there. Any claims to the contrary about the War Powers Act either misunderstand the statute and longstanding precedent, or they're just being disingenuous.
I mean, think about this, too. Think about this. The seditious six, right? Put out a video telling troops to disobey orders, right? So here we have a debate that's going on where they're claiming the actions were unconstitutional. So had that gotten out, that this debate was raging, that entire operation could have been foiled because people may have believed it, but have been misinformed as to the facts of the law, and then emboldened by the seditious six. Remember the video they put out? Do you see the stakes? Do you see where we're at right now at this juncture? At this juncture? Not gonna be prudent, right? No, it ain't gonna be prudent to allow an operation like that to get leaked and then publicly debated when he has the full authority to do so. And then suddenly you've got troops questioning the commander-in-chief. That's what's at stake right now, folks. That's where we're at. Now, let's go to the vice president in the briefing room. Our cameras were there. This is the rapid response angle. If you want to see ours, you can check out the channel. Get the Gary Franchi perspective from the White House. But let's go to the White House.
So I've heard a couple of things. One, that I was kept out of the planning for the Venezuela operation. That's false. And another, that Tulsi was kept out of the planning for Venezuela operations. That's completely false. Look, we're all part of the same team. And one of the things that is really amazing about that operation is that we kept it very tight to the senior cabinet level officials and related officials in our government. And we kept this operation secret for a very long time. I'm very proud of that. I think it suggests that the team works very well together. Well, looking ahead, what is my role? Look, my role is going to be whatever the president asks me to do. Well, every other day, I'm chairing the meeting that we do on this among White House principals to talk about next steps to try to ensure that Venezuela is stable. And as the president has directed us to do, to ensure that the new Venezuelan government actually listens to the United States and does what the United States needs it to do under our country's best interest. So I'm going to be as involved as the president wants me to be. So far, that's been very involved, and I'll keep on doing that so long as the president asks me to do it. So I've heard a couple of things.
Yep. JD Vance torching the media again. Spewing their fake news. Well, here he is more.
Every president, technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. And that'll continue to be how we approach things. Go ahead. Technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look.
Yep, we're going to keep going. Doesn't matter. China issuing a final warning against the illegal U.S. blockade of Venezuela. Yeah. Just cook the Panda Express, girl.
Of international The United States has brazenly resorted to the use of force against Venezuela and demanded that America First be applied when Venezuela disposes of its own oil resources. This is a typical act of bullying, a serious violation of international law, and a grave infringement on Venezuela's sovereignty that also severely undermines the rights of Venezuelan people. China strongly condemns this. I would like to stress that the legitimate rights and interests of China and other countries in Venezuela must be protected. The United States has long imposed illegal unilateral sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector and has recently brazenly used force against Venezuela, dealing a severe blow to the country's economic and social order and also threatening the stability of global production and supply chains. China has already issued strong condemnation in this regard. I would like to reiterate that cooperation between China and Venezuela is a cooperation between sovereign states and is protected by international law and laws of both countries.
Well, China, you can just go spin some noodles, all right? We got this. What just happened in Venezuela was not about Maduro. It was a major strategic blow to communist China. This is according to Michael Waller. Days before Maduro was removed, Beijing declared it would not give up an inch of its gains. Then Trump took it away anyway.
A couple days before.
What are the implications with respect to communist China? I've seen quite a bit of commentary on this issue. Notably, there was actually a delegation from China there, hours before the raid that took Maduro actually took place. What do you think?
Well, it was interesting because just a couple days before Trump removed Maduro, the Chinese regime had said, we're not going to give up an inch of our gains in Latin America. So Trump just went and took away a lot of those gains. Venezuela was an important linchpin for the CCP and for its global strategy in building a blue water navy that will ultimately be able to operate in any part of the world. It will become a trans-Pacific power on the sea. It will become an Atlantic maritime power. The PLA Navy would become under this plan a Caribbean power, which means control over Panama Canal, which means control over shipping from Houston, Galveston, Mississippi River Delta, anywhere in the world. So it would use its Belt and Road dual-use port facilities, both seaport and airport facilities, to expand its power projection, and then to potentially not potentially, but this is the whole theory behind it, to allow any Chinese warships existing now or those that are being built now to dock at these Belt and Road facilities anywhere in the world. So Venezuela was a colossal asset for China as a piece of real estate from which the CCP could operate against us, but also a huge resource sitting on the world's largest reserves of oil. Once that infrastructure was restored, Venezuela could provide the Chinese communists with any amount of oil, and for them it's embargoed oil, right? It's under sanctions, so the Venezuelans can't sell it on the open market for dollars. They have to sell it at a steep discount, and the Chinese communists don't even have to pay in petrodollars. They're paying in yuan, or they're paying in barter. So this is super, super cheap oil that's keeping Xi Jinping's whole domestic and global agenda afloat, and they've just lost it.
There's this other dimension I heard about. There was commentary about how it was Chinese radar systems that had been basically evaded by the American force. Have you actually followed the dynamics of the raid and what we actually know as a fact? And how did this fit in?
Oh, this is a big defeat for the CCP's military hardware industry and for the Huawei telecommunications industry, because Venezuela is wired with Huawei. So Beijing is so smug about controlling the world through Huawei. Well, it looks like the United States was able to break in through cyber attacks into the whole Huawei system and shut it down. And also to break in to the logic systems of the computers running the Chinese-made air defense systems and to shut those down.
Fascinating. So it wasn't that the systems weren't working. It was that they were disabled.
They were disabled.
Yeah, that's what happens when you mess with the United States, okay? U.S. Senate passing Venezuela War Powers Resolution 52-47, backing limits to block Trump from further Venezuelan military action. Well, the good thing is he doesn't have to. It's the one and done. Operation Success. Mission accomplished. Right? Here's the U.S. ambassador to NATO talking about the effect of President Trump globally. I might have been Mar-a-Lago one time at the bar. And then I met him at NATO. That was wild. Anyway, here it is.
Superpower. Now, first of all, the president demonstrates unique American capabilities that nobody else in the world can exercise. And that, whether that is what happened in Caracas last weekend, whether that is the interdiction of these vessels on the high seas, and so many other ways that the United States of America is the unmatched world superpower. Now, saying that is, he has emphasized how the first priority of this foreign policy is the Western Hemisphere, to keep our place where we live safe and secure and for our people. And I think this deal that's now taking shape, where we're going to take the oil that is sanctioned, that cannot be sold otherwise, and use it for the benefit of the people of Venezuela, I think is a brilliant idea. Obviously, buying America products enhances our business and our industry, and it's a win-win. And it's, most importantly, it's a win for the people that have long suffered in Venezuela. First of all, the president demonstrates unique American capabilities that nobody else in the world can exercise, and that what.
Sorry, I was just texting Matthew Whitaker. Oh, yes, okay. All right, enough flexing. Listen, the Senate passing their War Powers Resolution 52-47 doesn't matter. The Constitution doesn't change because politicians hold a vote. The president acted within his authority. The operation succeeded. China lost ground, and the Western Hemisphere is shifting back under American influence. And every single media outlet that pushed the Tulsi Gabbard exclusion story, every reporter who repeated the palace intrigue narrative about without checking, they've all been exposed. The vice president calling them out by name. Their PSYOP collapsed. And the administration just proved it can act decisively when the press chases fabricated scandals. You see, the media wanted you to believe the Trump administration was in chaos. They wanted you to think Tulsi Gabbard was sidelined. They wanted you to believe Venezuela was some kind of rogue operation that violated the Constitution. Every single piece of that narrative was a lie. The vice president confirming full involvement from the DNI. Called the War Powers Act fake and unconstitutional, and while reporters chased anonymous sources, the actual operation delivered a devastating blow to Chinese influence in Latin America. In Beijing, they're furious because years of strategic investment just evaporated. The Western Hemisphere is being locked into an American-led economic orbit. That's not chaos, that's called strategy. That's called the MAGA world order. And it's working. The media got caught manufacturing dissent while the commander-in-chief was winning. So should the Senate stop wasting time with toothless war power resolutions? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments, and support the show by visiting the merch shop linked in the description.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this. Share this now.